The only legacy I want to leave is I just lived life on my own terms to the best of my ability at that particular point in time.
So what does true wealth mean to you?
I think a really good home and a very balanced life, those are very, very critical and important. Flamboyance is not a measurement of wealth creation. I find a lot more people who may not have wealth actually would be a lot more flamboyant than you would need to be. When you're in the journey of creating value creation is you're creating for a lot of people, and wealth creation is what you're creating for yourself. And I think if you create value, then you create wealth. Finally, when they accepted that I wanted to do something on my own, my dad said, if things go wrong financially, I'm not going to be able to bail you out. I have the ability now to buy more expensive things, which actually means nothing.
So you think traditional legacy news media is dead? Hello and welcome to another episode of Visionaries of India. I'm Sonia Shenoy. On today's episode, we speak to Ronnie Screwvala, who is a serial entrepreneur, a change maker, someone who works for social impact and who is building Swades Foundation to empower over 2,000 villages in Maharashtra. We also talk about his wealth creation journey. Let's go.
Hi.
Hi, Ronnie.
Hi,
How are you?
Sonia. Welcome home.
Thank you so much for having us here.
No, looking forward to a conversation, a nice conversation.
Absolutely.
You got some sharp questions for me, or?
I hope so.
Okay, fine. Sounds good.
But this is a beautiful home that you have. Thank you so much for letting us here. And you know what we're going to do is, this show is called Visionaries of India. So we're talking to people who have built for India, who have built great businesses. And you are front and center there today. So thank you for being a part of this show. So have you always been living here?
About 20 years.
Okay, so you never, I mean, this is in the heart of Bombay, so it can't get
I've
better than this.
been a breach candy boy for most of my life. My parents used to stay, so I used to stay with them just 4 buildings away. My wife used to stay 8 buildings away. Then we met. So it's other than about 4 years in my whole life, in the last 30. But the first 20 years, I stayed at Grant Road, which is when, that was a different era, a different life, and some of my most fondest memories.
So you never thought of moving out of Breach Candy, out of Bombay itself?
Out of Bombay, no. Out of Breach Candy, I was neutral. I stayed in Cupgrade for about 5 years. But I think out of Breach Candy, no. I think we just found a lovely home that we wanted to call home, and that's how it happened.
And is this your only home? I ask because, as an investor, I'm sure you would have several investments in real estate as well. But how do you think about it?
I have zero investment in real estate. I think for the first 18 years of my life, we lived in a rented joint family where we didn't have even an attached bathroom. So those were what I would call my upbringing. Early days in upbringing. And then we came and stayed at Breach Candy when my father got a job in a multinational. And I think almost, I would say when I was 50, till that time, I didn't even own this home. Everything was rental and one moved around. So I think, So
was that a conscious decision to not own a home?
Not a conscious decision. I think when you're a first generation entrepreneur and you're walking up the stairs without taking the elevator, and when you've come from a lower middle class background, I think you think of frugality in a very different way.
So is it that you couldn't afford a home till you were 50, or you decided that renting is just a better option until you can?
I couldn't afford it.
Okay. Plain and simple.
Plain and simple.
Okay. And for someone who's perhaps starting off today, what would a better decision be? Because like you, several entrepreneurs tell me that till the age of maybe 45, 50, they don't buy their first home. It's very interesting to me.
It's a very personalized thing, Sonia. I think, whether it's 50 or 45, would I like to own a home? Sure. I think sometimes it gives you the flexibility. For me, I didn't need the flexibility of going from city to city. So some people may feel I may not be living in the city for the rest of my life, and my business will pull me somewhere, or my job will pull me somewhere. So that's a different kind of a decision. I was very clear I was never going to move out of Mumbai. So I think, I would have loved to own a home at 40 or 30, but I just couldn't afford it.
Everything happened at the right time, perhaps, right? Okay, before we ask you about your personal journey, want to take us through it's a really interesting home. So anything that stands out, anything that talks to us about your journey?
Well, I think that my home talks more about my wife's journey than mine in some forms or the other. She was very fond of art, and she is fond of art, but not in a expensive way, in just a love and appreciate way. and the colors. So I think if you see the sense of colors, I think both of us are in the neutral pastel mood, and I think that's one. For me, finally, when I owned a home, I was just looking for something that was a really nice, large space, if I could afford it. And when we actually looked at this place, this was a 6-bedroom apartment that we converted into a 2-bedroom apartment. And I think the only argument we had is whether we should have 2 or 3. And I said, we're not going to have guests. So there's just a room for us and my daughter at that particular point in time. But yeah, so I think just a high ceiling, a large space, non-cluttered is what I think describes the home.
Yeah, I mean, it is large, but it's also cozy in
Very
its
cozy,
own way,
very
right?
warm.
Really lovely, actually.
Yeah, it's warm. It's warm. And I think we wanted this break in a space. When you have a large room, I think from a design perspective, we wanted a break in a space. So as you can see, this has got a warmth in it, and it doesn't have a wall. And we wanted the glass, not because we thought sometimes, you want privacy in a study, but I think just the expanse was always nice. So I think that was really good. All our books of Zarina's, there's not a collection. This is like what she's read over a period of the last
time.
20 to 30 years. I think her biggest regret is that she had 50 years of collection of the National Geographic, which then we couldn't fit in here, so she gave away. I think that's her only regret. And then I got gifted this piano, which is a backstory for me, because when we used to stay at Grant Road,
Yeah.
both my mom and my aunts, and we were staying in a joint family, were all piano teachers.
Oh.
Yeah, so some of my first girlfriends were all were all the pupils that came in, were the pupils who came in, and I had a chance to socialize with them. And then suddenly somebody gifted me this piano. So whenever I'm really frustrated, I
you
kind of
play?
bang onto it a little bit in an absolutely fun way. So this space above it is the only place where my books are. So
But coming back to the piano, you never wanted to learn and upskill yourself
I did.
to stay.
I did actually. I
eh,
did actually. So if you see this, this is of course my mum's, but she was, so Trinity College of Music,
Yes.
London. I did till the 3rd grade
Oh,
of
lovely.
piano, theory and practical. Pictures are a lovely memory, that's what you collect. So in a home, I think you feel the warmth because it looks lived in.
Correct.
And it's not cluttered.
Absolutely.
Which is, I would say, for Parsis, that's quite a
Rarity.
yeah.
We speak to a lot of people about their journeys in the sense where they've reached, right? But so much about where you reach is where you came from. So you were telling me about your middle class background, lower middle class background, right? Do you think in a way that kind of brought about that hunger in you to become successful?
Absolutely, absolutely. I wouldn't even say hunger, because at that stage it's not easy to think that big and that ambitious. So it brings about a little bit of a rawness in you, if I can say that, and a frugality. And I think that frugality permeated into not ever being scared about building something and taking risks, because what did you have to lose? It kind of helped me not think that every time when people want to start businesses, the most important thing they think is to get funding. Because I thought, never started with it, so why should I feel entitled about it? And I think to a certain extent, when we started our not-for-profit, Serendipitously, at a very young age, I think I was in my 20s when I started our foundation, then we've grown it, and we are going to go one of these days to the village and take a look at that.
Are you still very frugal?
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed.
Yeah. I want to give you an example. And, one of the villages that we went to, and that'll be my best example for you. Like, I shopped for about T-shirts and pants once a year, sometimes once in 2 years. And then I buy 3, 4, 5 of them in the same color, so that, at the end of the day. And that's
No way.
So there's zero choice as far as clothes are concerned. When I have to get out to anything formal, it's a huge problem.
Why is that? You can't part with your money, is it?
Oh, no. It's not a priority.
It's not a priority. Okay,
It's
got
not a
it.
priority. No. I think not at all. I don't think it's frugal in a different sense. So we were there at the village, and we had done the before and after, and they were celebrating their dream village 3 years later, and they put up all the pictures. And you could see the transformation, and my photograph then and there, and I was wearing that same
The
T-shirt.
same T-shirt.
So they were also saying, "Ab kuch badal gaya, aapka T-shirt nahi
T-shirt
badal
nahi badla. I ask you whether you're frugal because you have seen a big journey of wealth creation as well, right? Has that changed the way you think about money?
I guess it does. I think it'll be arrogant and foolish and naive to say that when you have it, you have a different sense of confidence and self-conviction to be able to talk about it than when you don't have it. But I think it's been a gradual journey, right? I mean, I had it to a certain extent. It was value creation, but never liquid. So for the most part of my life, I don't think it was ever liquid. I was focused on building a media company. Everything that I had was completely an invest in that media company. I would have decent arguments with my dad, who kept saying, why don't you have Tata shares or Cipla shares? And I'd said, no, I've got UTV shares. And he says, it doesn't make any sense. You have to
It's not in your hand.
It's not in your hand. It's not liquid. You have to diversify your portfolio. You have to have some sense of de-risking yourself. You're forgetting where you're coming from or where you came from. But I think he was right in what he wanted to say. But that's what I meant. So it's only liquidity is a different process. Value creation is a different process. Quick money is a different process. What you do and why you create value and what you want to do with that value are very different symbolic systems, right? Why you create value and then what you want to do with that actually puts you in a very different perspective of how you want to deal with that.
If you had to put it down to 2 or 3 skill sets one needs to have to become successful in anything in life, right? What would it be?
No, I think it's each one to their own again. And in school, either I can get into the shallow, I can go for sports day and walk, take the pillar down, walk in the shallow and then figure my way out. Or otherwise, throw me in the deep. Yeah. And I think, so that's the choice you would make. That's what you would need to do. And nobody's going to tell you which you go to. They'll give you a lecture about the pros and cons of shallow and pros and cons of deep. Then it's up to you to go out and do that. And a lot of people just jump. So I think
swim or drown, right?
Curriculum teaching needs to just give you the breadth of what you want to do. Families obviously play a big role. I mean, I think when I wanted to actually go out and do something on my own, for my parents, it was a highly risk environment right now at that time. Because at that time, firstly, socially, it was a discard. It means you really couldn't get yourself a good job. So now you're going to start working for yourself. How worse can it get? And I think finally, when they accepted that I wanted to do something on my own, the only words that my dad said is, look, we'll morally support you, but I just want to tell you, if things go wrong financially, I'm not going to be able to bail you out. So that's really a grounded statement, right?
Yeah.
In that
it's a
context.
fact. At the end of the day, if he can't, he can't.
He can't, right? So that, now, when you start with that sense of non-entitlement...
There's nothing to lose then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was at an early stage. So I don't think anyone taught me, or you don't need to be taught that. It's just one of those 2 or 3 or 4 of those things that happen to you at an early age. As much as, I don't swim as well as my daughter does. She's a champ. I started by that throwing me into the deep end, not the shallow.
But that's a problem for all of our children, right? Because they are born into so much privilege that one wonders whether will they actually crave for success or struggle for anything.
I think that's a very naive way of looking at things.
Really?
Yeah. Because I don't think I got into the privilege, and my daughter doesn't feel privileged or entitled. But I think it's a lot to do with your upbringing. Entitlement is not a natural phenomena of being to the manner born.
That's going to stay with me when I bring up my child. But, coming back to your journey, when we talk about Ronnie Screwvala, we think about a serial entrepreneur, a change maker, a producer. Which is the hat that gives you the most joy wearing?
Yeah, I think disrupting is something that's important to me. I don't see myself as a serial entrepreneur. I think I stayed in media longer than most people stayed in media. To be honest, during the time in which I started media, nobody knew how to define media and entertainment. By the time I exited, almost 20 years later, I would say the 400, 500 people that were right in the beginning of that. And we had a lot of big media names. And I remember all of us standing in one line at that time, the national network, which is Doordarshan, to make up bids for programs. And all of them today run media empires of their own. When I moved out of media completely, for me, it was important to start a second innings and not a second act. And I know a lot of people said, but this is what you know best. People will back you, go into it. And I said, for what? And that's what I mean by disruptive and change, right? Because for me to do the same thing all over again, firstly, I would say your odds for success in doing the same thing in a second act are very low. Second, you then start gravitating to the same team of members and people that you've dealt with. You're not learning.
You don't upskill
They're finishing the
yourself in
sentence
any way.
you started. What's the fun? It's a comfort zone of the highest order. And everyone thinks, just, we've got a playbook, let's do the playbook again. That's the amazing part that I see so much time with, very intelligent people. And when they use the word playbook, I get a little worried. Because I don't think today there's a playbook for anything. The world is moving around too fast.
No, I am totally convinced because I'm someone who's left. I was in broadcast media on TV for 16 years and I quit it last year. And now I'm into social media and doing new things and learning new things every day. And I completely agree with you. The old order has changed. But when you had to take that step, right, after selling your business, just take us through the process. How did you decide what business to get into, where to, invest?
No, I think when I was at that, there was no crossroad. I think we had a great partner in Disney. And one fine day, they popped the question that should we just merge and put it all together. And I don't think it took more than 3 weeks for Zarina, me, and a few other people, but mainly the two of us, to really decide that it was really the best thing to do for a multiple of reasons. Not because I knew what I wanted to do next, and certainly what Zarina wasn't sure what she wanted to do next. But it made more sense because here we were selling or divesting to a brand that was 100x of ours, which was Disney as compared to UTV. It would ensure career growth for everybody else. It was the right time to look at it in scale. For me as an entrepreneur also, I felt it might just give me completely new opportunities in a completely different area. But at that stage, I was not defocused that how does it look as an exit? And exit was a bad word. Even in 2012, I think till Flipkart did an exit, that was the time when everyone in India started using, or even in the Silicon Valley, exit was a bad word. It was actually meant you were abandoning your company or abandoning the media sector. So I think I got a lot of brickbats when I went out to tell talent, people, everyone was, but why? But
You're
why?
doing so well,
Yeah,
and you're
but
right
why?
at the top. Yeah.
But why? No, I don't know about that. There's nobody who stays at the top as at the top. But why? So I think that was the first part. And I would say after that, I was quite clear that I wanted to do a few things, but not sure what. And I think that 1.5 years in 2014, where we were meeting tons and tons of people in the not-for-profit space, in that education kept popping up in rural sense. Then I started looking at two sectors, and one of them was education. The other one was just being disrupted in the consumer space, and I realized in 2 months, because I thought brand, scale, consumer sound right, but in 2 months, I just felt, no, I'm not going to, even if I find the next big Maggie noodles, I'm not going to be able to get excited about that.
This is so interesting to me. It's almost like a mini MBA class to me. But let's do one thing. We've spent a lot of time here, so let's go to our next destination. Where are you taking us?
Well, we can go into the living room. We can sit down instead of standing.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have the cutest member of your family joining us.
Yeah. Sky's joined us right now here. And he'll settle down. Like most labs, he likes to be petted under the chin.
Yeah.
And if I put my hand down here, then he's going to do his begging. But anyway.
He's super cute. He's super cute, yeah. Have you had him since he was born?
Yeah. He was 6 weeks when he came to us from Assam, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We had a lab before this, and he lived till almost 15 years. And I think both Zarina and I, and that was my first time I had a dog. I was actually scared of dogs. And one fine day, Zarina came home and said, I think we'll get a dog. And I said, okay. And then we had our lab. His name was Sprite. And I mean, what's there not to love about them?
Of course. Yeah.
And he stayed for 15 years. And then I think after a year, we wanted to get another one. And this guy's 5.
We were talking about entrepreneurship and all of that. Now, there's a money angle to all of this as well, right? So nowadays, the younger generation really wants to know how to make a quick buck. But for someone like you, who has come from the frugality that you spoke about to now making your billions, right? How does it feel, and how do you think, how has the journey been for you?
I can't relate my journey in the trajectory of actual wealth creation. I mean, value creation and wealth creation to me are a little different things. Value creation is you're creating for a lot of people, and wealth creation is what you're creating for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think if you create value, then you create wealth. So I think wherever and whatever that I've built and looked at, it's always about value creation first. And I think whether it's in an organization and a company, I think what we're doing in the not-for-profit space cannot be treated as non-value creation. Because if I'm building or helping build or being a catalyst for creating a GDP augmented income for 1 million people, that's value creation as far as I'm concerned. And that's a different wealth creation. So that's also a very, very pertinent part of what we want to do. So I think the journey for me is not about numbers. I think it's just about the way one kind of builds it. And then you feel a sense that if you've got resources, there's a lot more you can do about it, right? And I think, for example, when I moved out and we sold and divested out of media and I started UpGrad, for me at that stage, it was a full playback of what maybe at that first stage when I didn't start with any capital at all. So here, when we started UpGrad, I was quite clear that I didn't want to bring in investors in the beginning and that we could do it with our own capital. So it gives you that kind of liberate power. If I look at after getting out of media and 5 years after my non-compete was over, I wanted to continue to tell stories. So I started RSVP, which is it doesn't stand for anything else. I know RS stands for Ronnie Screwvala, but actually the RSVP is more because nobody in the media industry ever replies on RSVP. So it was like a funny, cynical tone to that thought. But I guess because now one has one's own capital, for me, telling stories is more a passion project where I'm not accountable to anybody. I'm not raising anybody else's money. You're not onerous for that. So the other part, again, I think, is when you're in the journey of creating value, if you start saying if it doesn't do well, it's somebody else's money, but if it does well, it's my money, that itself is a problem. And I think a lot of people need to watch out for that. So I think those are the two things that I would kind of stay with. But if you ask me, even my personal finance and my colleague who handles our family office, he's always looking at, what's the resources that you had there? Because actually wealth creation is a lot where, I'm not saying it's illiquid, it's liquid, but it's not something that you're suddenly going to be able to do anything about it.
Correct.
Plus, I think, look, in India, it's important that you lead a balanced life. I think, I just feel flamboyance is not a measurement of wealth, of wealth creation. And some people have it and some people don't. I find a lot more people who may not have wealth actually would be a lot more flamboyant than you would need to be.
So what does true wealth mean to you?
I think a really good home and a very balanced life, a great family, those are very, very critical and important. Living on my own terms, because yes, it does help you balance off and do things you want to do without necessarily having to think about that. And that to me is much more liberating than having a bank balance that I think I can spend on buying a car, for example, or buying clothes. That ability to just live on your own terms, it gives you that sense of confidence. And why not? You're taking a risk. It's your capital. You want to do whatever you want to do. That kind of liberated feeling to me is much more about wealth creation.
That freedom of choice, basically.
Then I have the ability now to buy more expensive things, which actually means nothing.
But then what's happening now in the startup ecosystem is that there is, of course, a lot of competition across spaces, right? Just quick commerce, for example, we were talking about earlier. Competition picks up and then investor money is put in and then there's that pressure to deliver profitability and all of that. So all of that really weighs down on the founder. So how do you deal with that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think competition is actually, you wouldn't grow if it wasn't for a sense of a competitiveness. So one, I would say there's a sense of herd mentality, a very strong sense of herd mentality, right? And I think that part creates, so I think the ecosystem, if it's too overfunded, if you have herd mentality, then everyone thinks there's FOMO. If there's FOMO, then people come in and you attract more capital into that sector. And there's no logic to capital. Let's be very clear. I have full respect for a lot of savvy private equity and venture capital investors, but it is a herd mentality from their point of view. And the point is, nobody goes and analyzes the 7 things that went wrong with them. They will only look at the 3 things that they did well, and then that's the picture they will paint for the next funding, which is exactly how that ecosystem should work. But for that entrepreneur, if you're one of those 7, that's a problem because that's a binary impact on kind of what you want to do. So all I would just say is, it's good to have competition. I mean, look at most of the sectors that we're in here today. The reason why in telecom, we are one of the cheapest countries in terms of consumption. Why rural India, people can talk to anybody else. Why you've got the bandwidth you got is because a competitive environment came into the telecom sector that made everyone, the consumer benefited. So I think competition where the consumer benefited is great. I think the fact that today you can get something at 10 minutes it's not a luxury, it's fun.
But it's crazy. It's a concept that just came out of nowhere. It's not done
It's
anything
not a concept
globally.
that came out of nowhere. It's a concept that's tried and tested and did not work. And for some reason, it connected here. There's that, sometimes you have that place where it's at the right time and the right place where you have a right sense of scale and then it can all fit in and dovetail and the consumer says, why not?
No, but I'm saying generally we as Indians tend to ape a lot of global practices, but this is something that never worked globally and just took off in India, right? So in a sense, there was a problem that needed to be solved.
No, I don't I might be a minority in this, but I don't think getting something in 10 minutes was a problem to be solved. But I think it became a nice consumer instinct, and now it's become a bit of a habit, and I think that's great. But I don't think it was a problem to be solved, personally.
Maybe in COVID, when people were not getting there.
But not the 10-minute part. Definitely not the 10-minute.
No, that,
Definitely not the 10-minute.
That just makes it convenient. I think
yeah.
people are spoiled now. Just coming back to UpGrad and that journey. At what point did you realize that, okay, this is the space I want to be in, and what do you see as the future of education in India? Because it has had its stops and starts, in terms of across the education vertical, even with startups, for example, right?
Yeah.
Did you see that coming?
I look at it from a global point of view. I don't think skilling and can be looked at only from an India perspective, because I think really we can be a skilling capital of the world, partly because the market here is massive, and partly because today with AI and with technology, the gravitas of what people, and in India where you can actually do a certain sense of arbitrage and train people to actually in online be some of the best teachers, best faculty, is incredible. And I think that's the opportunity that one saw at that stage. And yeah, to me, it was a very element of being disruptive. Do I give myself more than a 5 on 10 of where we've got here right now? No, I think I give myself right now 3 on 10. That's more because I also look at things very cryptically, and I always look at the cup that's half empty rather than the cup that's half full.
No way, really?
Yeah, but I don't think overall globally this sector has opened up the market, because forever learning is a very clear concept that is here to stay. We haven't overall internationally and globally been able to formalize it in a certain manner. Am I satisfied with what we've gone? No. I think there's just an incredible opportunity that needs to be taken. And it's not just India, it's around the world.
Where do you see the future of media? Because you were, a part of media when people, the old order, so to speak, things have really changed a lot now with OTT and all of that. So you think traditional legacy news media is dead?
Well, nobody's dead till they're cremated. The fact that nobody is noticing you in many points of view, look at the viewership. It's like we make it sound like there's 100,000 people watching an English news channel, for example, and people make it sound like everybody watches it. But it's only that you only talk to that same people who think everyone's watching, but nobody's actually watching it.
It's like an echo chamber.
It's not relevant. It's Dolby sound, echo chamber personified from that perspective. So I wouldn't know about it being dead, but nobody cares. Nobody's noticing it. So yeah, you're as good as dead. That's
so
how
where
I
are
would look at
people
that.
getting their news then?
No, I think it's more from other mediums or other interaction where they want to hear it from other people from that perspective. So what 5 people's view and what's happening in the world, and then you forming your view, is happening much more than you just feeling I need to put on something to be able to do that.
So citizen journalism.
Yeah, so I think that credibility there is a problem. Again, I wouldn't call it dead, because yes, those channels still do exist. But I would say overall in media, the other part here is sports, right? Most people look at sports as not part of media. It is part of media worldwide. It's a very important criteria of the media. In India, normally the habit of paying for what you consume has always been at a much lower element of what you want to do, right? Because you've never been able to really charge people for a full we're still one of the lowest cable TV countries paying in the world. OTT platforms here, whether it's Netflix, Disney, whatever else, is still 1/8 or 1/9 of what they charge anywhere else in the world. So if you look at that, our paying capacity is that's just because we've got it free for such a long period of time. So I think economically, it's got its own challenges across the board. But at the heart, storytelling hasn't changed. It's actually improving. I think the fact that people want to now consume more, writing has gone to the next level thanks to OTT platforms. Storytelling has gone to the next level. So I think the ability for you to be influenced, documentaries was never a category that anyone looked at. But now today you can tell factual stories. People are looking for a sense of realism along with storytelling. I think all of those are adding a lot to it. But how to make it into an economic viable business, it's tough, because at the end of the day, if you look at all the equations that are happening there, it's sports that's wagging the tail of the dog.
Correct. No, absolutely. So what next for you? I mean, for someone who's been in media, there was UTV, there was UpGrad, there's of course the Swades Foundation. What next?
Do I look like somebody who's looking for a next?
You're always looking for a next.
No,
I know
I'm not
that.
looking for any next. I wasn't looking for a next when I moved out of media at all. It just happened as I said. So no, I'm actually not the person looking out for the next. I think what one wants to do in the disruptive space. I think I'm really blessed and being in a phenomenal place where I think I have the resources and the liquidity to do some of the things that I want to do and create the impact. I think I'm happy with the not-for-profit that we have at scale and just the gratification it gives us, but actually more with the entrepreneur hat, right? Because if it was just sitting there and being
checks.
Philanthropy, which I don't particularly like the word. It's a good word, but it's not a great word because it's a very passive word. And I think we're very active. So to me, the beauty on the Swades Foundation is we're all involved with it. We're very active and we want to shape the destiny of it. If I'm doing that in the skilling, learning, workforce development, education sector, in the not-for-profit sector, I have the ability to tell stories without necessarily making them into a business. I think we're all in good health and we can travel and have a great family. And for more entertainment, I have a kabaddi team and a table tennis team. So right now we have a kabaddi league. So it's really
you
good
have your
fun.
hands full.
Yeah, it's good fun. I take a 3-hour drive to Pune, watch the match, drive back in the night, come back at 1 o'clock. Yeah.
What more can you ask for?
Yeah, so why would I want to look for what's next?
So if you had to tell us about the billionaire mindset, what is the definition of having a billionaire mindset?
I really don't know. I don't think I'm qualified to do that.
Do you
and I think
have
if you
it?
ask people or most of the billionaires, I don't think that was the goal set that people had when you do that. So I'm not being facetious. I'm not trying to be over modest. I'm not trying to be cliched about it, but I really don't know what that means because that numbers doesn't move there. As I said, the only mindset change is I'm feeling liberated that I can do things and be in control of them, be accountable for them. And that is a very liberating feeling. So I think that, for me, it's just feeling good and liberated that I can do things that I want to do. Because I think when people want to say, what's the legacy you want to leave? I think that's a complete waste of time. I mean, why would you be worried about once you're gone, what people think
Who
of
cares?
you? Yeah, genuinely, I think the only legacy I want to leave is I just lived life on my own terms to the best of my ability at that particular point in time. And to a certain extent, value creation and wealth creation allows you to do that. So to that level, it augments this feeling. Yes, that's the good part about it. No question about it.
Okay, this was really a fun conversation and it's not over yet, right? We're heading to
Sure,
your office
we're going
next.
across. I think we're going to the office, yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much.
Lovely. See you.
See you in the office.
Yeah, catch you then.
Just so much history in this office. I was just looking around at all.
This is
the
like that Garuda
paintings.
from our movie Uri, a surgical strike that we did.
Oh.
So we just somebody presented me with a poster of that. The nice part here is people come from anywhere and everywhere and they all keep saying the energy in the office is so great and it's so nice and open. And that's the key, you don't need to have a large office. You don't need to have it be plush to really figure that out. This is a kabaddi where we were the winners of the second season. So we got all our kabaddi matches here. And this one is really our blueprint for Swades, right? So, I mean, if you look at just where we are, like we're in Mumbai, and then we go south, and these are the 7 blocks we operate in here, and therefore what we do for all the things. And then now we've also gone north to Nashik, Igatpuri, and these 3 blocks.
Wow.
So that's our geography right now. But we look at it from a block perspective. Yeah.
But how many villages does the foundation cover now?
So I think when we go across, we're going to go to a village in Sudhagar, which is right here. Srivardhan is on the coast. This is your India coast. There's a lot more in fishery and things like that here. But we cover about 2,200 villages here, another 2,000 villages here. The active part would be 4,000 villages and over 1.1 million people.
Wow.
But because we now have this model, which we'll talk about in the Village Development Committee, that means they need to actually form that Village Development Committee. I think the ones we really work very closely with is 500,000. The ones we touch and in this geography is about 1.1 million.
Okay, it was so inspirational for me to just get a sneak peek into your life and to learn so much about your life, your career. Thank you so much, Ronnie. It was really a pleasure.
It was a really lovely conversation, and just the whole element of where we started, where we finished,
Yeah.
and some of the experiences. So yeah,
And I'm
always
super
happy to share.
excited to go and see one of the villages at the Swades Foundation as well.
Look forward. See you there.
Okay, see you there. Okay, so this has been an amazing experience to witness what you've created here, and of course with the Swades Foundation. But let me start from the beginning, right? As I was discussing earlier, whose thought was it? How did this idea come about? And what's the vision now?
3 big questions, maybe short answers for that. But I think started off just very early stages when we had just incorporating and started our entrepreneurial journey. And we'd rented a 10,000 square foot office. And then we had 3 or 4 students that came down from Columbia University and sat on our veranda and said, we're going to visit your villages for 2-3 days. And both of us said, this sounds exactly like one of the movies we had done called Swades.
Of course.
Where, Shah
I
Rukh,
grew up watching that movie.
where Shah Rukh Khan is working at NASA. And then he goes to his boss and says, I'm going to meet my nanima in the village and I'm going to go. And the guy says, go light your bulb. And literally he goes to the village to light the bulb and give it electricity.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at that one single picture, that is pretty much what I think we've been wanting to do and have been doing across the villages, is lighting people's bulbs.
Yes.
Wow, that's
well
amazing.
said. Well
Well
said.
Zarina, I notice how proud you are of this, not just the Swades Foundation and all that's happening here, but of him and his vision and coming, to
No, this is
fruition.
everyone's vision.
This is all our
Yeah,
vision.
this is not
It
any
is-
one
I-
person.
I'm-
Community.
I'm
No.
proud because he wanted this to happen, and we are all making it happen. I think we are making it happen, and now the community is making it
it's
happen.
completely.
I
Everybody
think
is
it's
making
been like an amazing journey, probably one of the best journeys of my life. So
7
he said,
years.
why don't we lift 1 million people out of poverty? And I said, that's insane. I'm on.
Oh, wow.
So that's how Swades started.
I don't think, anyone
But that's
would
the
have
thing.
gotten
right?
convinced with
See,
that.
but that's the thing. You make statements and then you have to live up to them. That's
Yeah,
what
so
it's.
then
have to
it's
see it
hard
through.
work.
You have to see it
So what
through.
we did, which was very interesting also, is that we are media people.
Yeah.
So we had I realize now the tremendous DNAs that we had to make this succeed, which is teamwork, finding heroes, collaboration. All this is part of the film industry, part of the media industry. You can't do things on your own. But the thing that we realized most is that we don't know anything about it. I think we have the humility to realize we don't know. So we went on a 1-year learning journey. And then we came up with our principles, which is holistic, community-driven, collaborative model.
So Mangesh, you want to tell us a little bit about the foundation, how much it has grown and what the vision is?
Yes, so
And how it's not anybody else's. It's your vision as much as
Yes,
everybody
Yes,
else's.
it's everybody's
and
vision. It's
mentioned
everybody's
we all
vision.
think of doing
Now.
something. So at my golden year of 50, I was fortunate to meet them.
Yeah.
So right now we are working in almost 1,000 villages across Nashik and Raigad, where we have village development committee. All these committee members are voluntary members. 50% have to be women. It has to be a mix of elderly and youth. And we test them for their willingness. So this is the key.
Yeah.
When we go, and earlier we discussed, we ask them, we tell them about Swades, are they ready to take ownership of the work? Many of them say, well, yes, we are ready to take, but we test them. We test them with simple tests. Okay, tomorrow morning, you all come together, let us clean the village, segregate plastics. So 30-40% will fail because they are not able to come together. Now, that is the starting point. From there till dream village.
Funny because I think in India, when we have to get to being the 3rd largest economy in the world, the big challenges for us is going to be China moved maybe rural to urban in a different manner. We're not going to be able to do that. And there's a certain pride of, if you've got your right standard of living, if your aspirations are as good, sometimes just moving to a city takes down your aspirations, doesn't take up your aspirations.
And takes down your standard of living also.
Yeah. Here, they've got their own home, they've got their community. It's a much better thing than one person going out there to do a skilling job in a big city or whatever else. I'm not saying that's wrong or right. That's the ecosystem that I think makes an incredible difference. And it's a very pivotal part for India to be where it wants to be in 2047. And I think today also the government is doing a lot of welfare schemes, which is phenomenal. But if we can just add a little bit even to those welfare schemes where people feel, the pride that people are feeling here is, I did it. Not it got done.
what is the biggest challenge that you face during your entrepreneurship journey?
You know, I think most people think resources, because I think today's generation, I just find everyone feels the biggest challenge is if I'm getting funding. And I think that was the least of my challenges. I would say one of the biggest things was I never got funding easily ever. It was never a lollipop. So I think that just kind of grounds you in a very different way, makes your business model a different way. I think team building, loneliness are some of the most spectacularly impossible, you know, people call it resilience, but it's not resilience, because you could be absolutely down in the abyss. And you are alone. At that context, to build that fabric of trade, I think is some of the biggest challenges here. So I think today, if you look at a country like India, what I feel good about is that the sweat equity of people wanting to give back, not just in money, is very strong. And that, I think, is something that everyone needs to take away. But really, today here, if you see countries in Africa, India, it's not about us being developed countries or developing countries anymore. It's about creating an ecosystem. So I think that's something that gives me a great sense of recharge and pride.
Does it also give you a sense of purpose? Because I find that a lot of people, despite making a lot of money, remain very unhappy.
Yeah. I
Because
think you
there's
need
no
your North
purpose.
Star. I think you need your North Star. And I think I've been extremely blessed, and media is something that became a North Star, because it's an impact industry. You're telling stories, but you're impacting young minds across the board. I think in education today, I feel very fortunate. Serendipity got me into a second innings to do something in learning, skilling, and education. There again, with UpGrad, I feel very blessed that that's an impact sector. So, and Swades. So if I look at it, these are three phenomenal North Stars for me that have worked out very well, outside of my family, which is the biggest North Star.
Well, that's everyone's biggest North Star, right? Their family. But do you think that, I mean, for you as an entrepreneur, your journey has taken different turns, right? And in those turns and twists, you've pivoted in different ways and stayed relevant.
Yeah.
Which is hard for any brand to stay relevant for so many years.
Yeah.
Was it tough?
So I think my different journeys have been with me being put at multiple crossroads by design. You know, I'm hyper about creating opportunities where you're in multiple places multiple times, so that 2-3 times you can make some right turns, and whether you turn left or right and come back to that. So I think I would sum it up as opportunities that I've created for myself, some bad choices I've made, incredible failures, but quick reverse back.
So give me an example of some failures that you had to, I'm sure there are many, but something where you realize that, okay, this is not working, let me take a step back and sort of take a detour.
Tons of them. I think my ratio of failures to successes is 8 failures to 2 successes. And I think I say that with pride again, because of the simple reason that you just up your stakes when your failures are at that rate. Imagine if you had 4 failures or 5. Normally one would think you have 4 failures and 6 successes, which is why I'm walking this walk with you.
Yeah.
But actually the 8 failures, your stakes go up. The beauty about it is that when the successes come, they are 40x, 50x. Right. Otherwise, you may have 5 failures with a -5 and 5 successes with a +5. You land up with a +1 at best. But to be a 40x, either in impact or in value creation, you need to fail extremely
many more times.
Yeah, and I think that's really been pretty much my DNA.
So any regrets in missing out on those?
No, I don't think any
decisions?
regrets. No, because I don't think anyone should, because regrets would mean, oh, but in hindsight. And I don't think hindsight makes any sense. I mean, like in hindsight, anything, the point is you think that, oh, if I knew this, I would have done this differently. No, during that period, you wouldn't have known 9 other external factors that would happen that would not have allowed you to go down that route. So I think regret is equal to hindsight. Hindsight is a waste of time. It's a theoretical imagination in a hallucinative world. And we're in it's getting cooler in India. It's the right mix of monsoon, which makes it green, and yet there's a hunger that makes it brown. And I think what you've experienced today with the villages and with the community here is a sense of hunger and yet a sense of satisfaction. And that's the DNA of the country. If you just have satisfaction, you're going to be complacent. If you just have hunger, you're going to be hungry. And I think that's what we've seen today.
So if you have to give one piece of advice to someone who's just starting off in any journey, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say the one, I mean, there are lots of pieces of advice, but the one would be get ready to stay the course. Because the number of reasons why you want to opt out will be multiple. The reasons to stay will be very, very few. All right.
On
Lovely.
that note, thank you so much.
Thank you
so much
Thank
for
you.
taking the time out for us.
Yeah.